One of the lead stories on CNBC.com right now is about the New York City real estate market having a bit of a real pullback in terms of the overall market. How do you see certain markets in the U.S. faring versus others, or is this a general feeling of a pullback overall in housing in 2019?
Well, I think it's a general pullback, and obviously different markets might experience it differently. New York is a high-priced market, so there are the additional issues of the changes in the tax code last year having an influence on high-priced homes there. Diana's right. Mortgage rates will likely rise in 2019, as they did in 2018. Maybe not as much as we thought. You know, the news from Chairman Powell that there will be fewer rate increases is effectively good for the housing market. But the challenge is, the reason why rates are going up is because the economy is strong, and that counteracts the affordability crunch of mortgage rates. So it's the tug of war between the good economy and rising wages, and why rates are rising actually means that housing markets can at least withstand or deal with the more normalized rate environment that we expect next year.
So Mark, you bring up an interesting point about that tug of war. If we are to look at the U.S. housing economy, if we are to look at the housing stocks and all the building products companies out there, they didn't tell a very good story in 2018. Does this mean that the real estate market is not the best indicator for the U.S. economy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it certainly interacts or reacts to the U.S. economy. The good thing about housing is everybody needs it, and you can't outsource it. And so what we're struggling really with is, as Diana mentioned, a lack of supply that the home builders, can, with challenges, help to solve. I mean, the reason there are not that many home sales is so many existing homeowners today are sitting on mortgage rates at 3.5% or 4% and don't want to move. And so you don't get that supply of homes for sale, even though there's a great story of a strong tailwind demand among millennial first-time homebuyers who would love to buy something if it was for sale.
Mark, what will be the primary drivers of that housing trade, of that housing market in 2019? Is it going to be interest rates? Is it going to be the supply-demand imbalance? What do you think is going to be the primary factor that's going to be the biggest influence over housing next year?
The supply and demand balance is definitely the one that I'm focused on for next year. Rates will rise to maybe mid-5s, but that's not a high rate environment from a historical housing perspective. The bigger challenge is really that availability supply. Existing homeowners today are sitting in their homes on average for 10 years, and that's up significantly from prior to the boom or even 3 or 4 years ago. And the longer that people want to stay in their homes, they are the primary provider of most of the homes for sale out there in the United States. The more the key challenge really gets to how do we build more new and affordable homes to solve the supply problem.
So, Mark, we know that certain key markets, like you pointed out, New York City, also places like Southern California, are feeling a bit more of that pullback. What is it about? I mean, we know those markets are hot right now, right? But what is it about the rest of the United States housing market that perhaps should be a little bit more tempered with regard to expectations, both to the upside and downside? We're not seeing the kinds of price declines in real estate in certain other parts of the country that we are on the coastal parts of the Northeast or the western coast of the United States, right?
Right. It's the high-priced markets are high-priced because, one, they're sought after, so there's a lot of demand for housing, and in many cases they're highly restricted in terms of the availability of housing. That's not necessarily the case in many of the other markets in the United States. Houston is a perfect example. Fourth largest city in the United States, tons of home building, lots of expansion, Texas in general. And so, it really gets down to not just where people want to live, but sort of the availability of the housing stock there and the ability to build new stock in those markets really makes the difference.
Before we let you go, Mark, if I am a home buyer, what's the best time of year next year to target that, given your view on interest rates and affordability and housing demand?
I'd say probably early spring. I mean, there's not a lot of inventory for sale typically in the winter months, particularly in cold parts of the United States. But we know the rates will be rising further into the year. So let's target March as a good time to get out there and start looking to buy.